Good morning to everybody. Welcome to our second of a series of masterminds that we're doing around leading through crisis. And today we're going to be talking about battling the distractions during the crisis. These can be really distracting times that we're in right now. And, all of us are working from home, or some of us have the luxury sometimes to get out and go down to our office and do some work, sign some paperwork, whatever it is. We've got the challenges, some of us, with having our kids be a distraction, because we're not only are we taking care of them, but we're supposed to be helping facilitate their education. And all these different things that are taking place can really distract us from the things that are really important. And then maybe you read the news this morning like I did, or you watched the news last night, and you see that there's some areas of our state that are saying, we're not going to follow the governor's stay-at-home orders anymore. And so there's some other controversies that are taking place around us, some other distractions. And so today, as we talk about this, I wanted to have that as kind of a framework of where we begin today. Before we get rolling, I want to again recognize the great people that we have that are helping us facilitate. And Louanne Decker is a great colleague and friend and exceptional leader. Louanne is the Executive Director of Principal Leadership and School Programs in the Auburn School District. She teaches at the University of Washington, Tacoma, and at Seattle U in their doctoral program and principal leadership program. And so she brings great experience and great wisdom to our group. Dan Radloff is also one of our co-hosts, facilitators, and Dan is the president and founder of Red Hawk Fire Protection Systems, one of the fastest growing fire protection systems in the construction industry in the state of Washington and Oregon. So it's great to have Dan with us. And my other colleague is my brother, Karl. Karl is the president and CEO of WSRB Metric, and they are a solutions system, data solutions system for the insurance industry. And so Karl is an incredible leader, also an executive coach and speaker, and brings his information and talent and skills from leading groups, not only in the organizations that he leads, but also from doing training with other companies as well. So that's the four of us. We're really pleased to have you all join us today. It's good to see some new faces that weren't able to get on last time. And so again, welcome to all of you. I think that, as we start today, I wanted us just to jump in a little bit and have a little discussion about where we were from last week. And we had given you some reflection questions. And so I'm going to pop those up there really quick so that you can see them. They'll be in a poll that comes to you. And so you're going to see these. And what I want you to do is just give us some quick feedback like we did last week of which of these five do you want to focus our time on here this morning as we start this. And so our format today will be, we'll do a little review, and this is how we'll go in the next two sessions that follow. We'll do a review of what we learned last time, how maybe we applied whatever it was that we learned, and then roll into the presentation by John Maxwell, the short video piece that we'll have, and then come back out of that and then have the discussion pieces from there. And so as you're talking about that, I'd like to hear from somebody just what was one of your biggest lessons that you learned in this last session that we had last time. What was something that you learned that you can take away and apply? And so, before we do that, Louanne, would you jump in and give us that little piece about how we use the technology to help us with this too, besides the poll that I put up?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. So I will be sort of managing the chat window, and I'll also look for hands raised. And what we'll do for hands raised is we'll actually use on your kind of bottom line tagger there, we'll use that one that is usually for clap. And so, but it just is kind of an easier hands raised instead of going back into the Zoom chat for that. So if you have a question, you have a comment, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll make sure we call on you. And the hands raised, so as you go to the bottom and you pull up that kind of black line at the bottom, and it's under reactions, and there should only be 2 reactions. You should have a little hand that looks like this and a thumbs up. And so if you do the little hand, excuse me, yep, and I will make sure that we circle right back to you.
Okay, thank you, Louanne. So, so as we look at this, looking at our poll that we have right now, we've got a couple of areas that are trending stronger in these. But first thing I'd like to hear from somebody is, what's the biggest lesson you learned in this, learned from this last session about leading in crisis? What was something that you learned that you can apply right away?
I'll go first, Mike.
Okay.
I can't find my hand raised reactions on my Zoom, so I'll have to do my literal hand raise this morning.
There you go.
But one thing I found, I don't know as far as a strategy, but I found particularly comforting was just learning from John Maxwell about there have been many crises prior to this one, and that that good leaders will emerge. It will bring out the best and the worst pretty much in everyone, and that this too shall pass. And I guess I just took a little bit of comfort knowing that there have been really great leaders that have led us through some really trying times prior to this. And it made me realize that this too shall pass. And if we learn and apply what we've learned, then we have the opportunity to lead through this current situation. So I found that helpful.
Good. Awesome. Awesome. Somebody else want to, you can unmute yourself and then respond with your thoughts. So anybody else that want to?
I'll go.
Yeah, John.
A couple of things. I also agree. I picked up some nice comments out of the John Maxwell video, but then also Karl's comments as well. The one that Karl said that probably stood out with me was manage yourself first. You know, make sure you're taking care of yourself and everything associated with that. And then the comment that John Maxwell made as far as leaders always give a right perspective, hope, security, and encouragement. I think that's a good message for us every single day.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, you know, I was having a conversation with John Borno earlier, and we're going to jump to the third question here. It was, you know, what are 3 practical things you can do to stay strong and steady in the crisis? And so, John, do you want to share with us some of the thoughts that, or Jeff, I mean, do you want to share with us some of the thoughts that you had in regards to that?
I'm unmuted. Okay, great. Well, thanks, Mike. I tell you, I almost feel like this is just kind of echoing not only John Maxwell, but yourself and Karl. In my small world, kind of the experience that I've had some wonderful opportunities, but the opportunities have kind of thrown me right in the middle of messes, if you will, or crises, small crises, if you will. And I think kind of echoing what we've heard last Friday is the big things that I took away from that, and I really think are important, are things like staying calm, confident, keeping the perspective of the bigger picture. And I really am passionate about staying confident in these big crisis situation, any crisis situation. But there's a caution: is not to be not show folks that you're working with an ego or arrogance that, well, this is not a big thing. This is something that you can deal with, and it's all about me. That's a real slippery slope. So you got to have be calm and have a lot of confidence, and always look for other solutions if things don't work. The second thing is people. Jim Collins wrote a book in 2001 called Good to Great. Many of us are probably familiar with that. And I really embrace that. And it's all about getting the right people on the bus, the right people off the bus, and the right people in the right seat. We all know that story. I had a brokerage firm based out of Phoenix, Arizona. Had a young man that was assigned before I came on board, was assigned a very large book of business, and he just didn't have the capability to manage it. So it started running off. When I came on board, I had a chat with him, and I said, and this really nailed it for me on getting the right people in the right positions. And I said, Mark, what do you think's going on? You're losing business. And he says, well, I took over this book of business. He said, I've been coming in every day concerned that I was going to get fired, and for 6 months. And I had just come on board like within the last couple, 3 weeks. And I said, Mark, what if I gave you other options? And basically, he wanted to move back from Arizona to the Midwest and go back to what he was doing before. So I gave him a package that moved him and his family back, got him back in his comfort zone, and reassigned the book to somebody that could really take care of it. It doesn't always have to be a bad situation or a negative situation. Mark was actually happier when we worked out the details. So you got to get the right people on the bus, right people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. And in doing that, you've got to give them, demonstrate that you trust them and that they are allowed to make small mistakes. But if you see a trend, you got to, make some changes sometimes, but it doesn't have to be a negative situation. Trust and give them responsibility and the authority to get things done. I think the most frustrating thing for people sometimes is they have responsibility, but they have no authority to actually execute it. And I'm a big believer also in giving them authority. You trust, but then you also verify. So it's not a, just a freelance thing. Third thing, bottom line, is respect. Respect goes both ways. And frankly, I learned that from my dad, who was in the Navy in World War II, who was down in the boiler rooms of the Lexington when it was sunk in the battleship, in the Battle of Coral Sea. And he says, remember, and I did retire from the Marine Corps. He says, remember, respect goes both ways. And if you pay respect to those that are working for you and with you, he said it'll pay dividends. And to really be sincere, genuine, and have respect for folks at all levels, I think comes through to true leaders and will actually work well for you. So those are the three things I'd throw out, Mike, is, be calm, confident, get the right people, and really have sincere and genuine respect for everybody you're working with.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeff. Those are some 3 great points of calm, confidence, take care of the people, and have respect for them. Anybody else with 3 or 2 or 3 things about staying strong and steady in the crisis? See, it looks like Michael, are you trying to say something? I think we need to unmute you. There you go. Karl, you're muted too, so.
It looks like you're unmuted now, Michael. See if we can hear you. No.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
You're there.
All right. What's those silly headphones? Good morning, everybody. I think, last week's session was really cool to sit down and hear people's perspective. And I think what I took away from the perspectives that I heard, one, this too shall pass. And I think the more we tell ourselves that, the more it becomes a reality to us. Sometimes it's very hard to see that during the morass that the day presents. But I think I found myself over the course of the last week really thinking that thought, this too shall pass, quite a bit. And the other key point that I took away was taking care of those that you love, those that you work with, those that you associate with. And I think, I really adopted that mindset over the last week to really just be there for people, right? With meanwhile, in the background, the tape is running, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. Not minimizing people's thoughts, but just being there for them, listening and being emotionally connected to them. It's such an emotional component that I think we cannot blast by that at all.
Right. I think that would be really helpful and a great lead into the part that John's going to share with us today. So, Karl, you want to give us a little quick intro to what we're going to hear and see here?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Today's topic is dealing with distractions, and the three biggest that John identifies, so you can look for them ahead, is having your mind wander, negative thinking, and then anxiety due to uncertainty. So those are the three big ones that he talks about. And there's been some others identified already. Thank you, Jeff and Michael, for your good comments, and John. So John Maxwell, for those of you who were not on the call last week, is the #1 leadership expert in the world, according to Inc. magazine and the American Management Association. Based on, if you get a chance, look it up on Inc. magazine's website, based on metrics. It's not just a bunch of guys sitting around over a beer going, I like that John Maxwell guy. He's actually got metrics that support the fact that he is very, very influential. But why? Not because he's cool, because his stuff works. Because his material works, the stuff that he teaches is practical, and it will help you move your leadership and move your organization and move your life in a positive direction. Certainly has for me as well. So we're very excited about bringing you today a video. Today it's about 8 minutes. It's a little bit shorter hit, so take some good notes. Looking forward to a vibrant discussion. And remember your ACT in the margin. A for I need to act on that. C, I need to change that. And then T, I need to teach or transfer that to others. So in your margins, do that in your notes, and that'll help you process them and make them more valuable to you afterward. So without further ado, here's John.
Second comment on crisis is that a crisis is distracting. We use the term distraction, but I want to insert in this teaching right now the word traction, because traction is the opposite of distraction. You see, traction means to pull forward or to draw forward. It means that there's a momentum to move in the right direction. You've gained traction. You're making progress. Distraction is the opposite. It means to pull away. So when a crisis comes, it begins to pull us away. It begins to distract us. It begins to take us off course. It begins to confuse our priorities. It keeps us from making progress. So if traction is the action that draws us toward what we want in life, distraction are the actions that pull us away from the things that we want in our life. If you want to get distracted, just watch the TV news. Wow, I think we just need to fast from some of that. Honestly, their agenda is not always accurate reporting. They've got an agenda behind them. And let me just say this. As a leader, I hope you have no agenda except you put the people first every time. You see, that's the only thing as a leader that's going to keep me from falling and being a bad leader, because there's not much difference between manipulating a people and motivating them. Manipulating people is when I move you for my advantage. And so many times during a crisis, that's what leaders do. It's always wrong. It's wrong for leaders to do it. It's wrong for politicians to do it. It's wrong for the media to do it. It's wrong. What part of wrong don't we understand? But when we put the people first, when we have no agenda except lift people, serve people, add value to people, it helps us to keep some sort of traction in a time of distraction. Well, what's the results of distraction? Mind wandering. What do? Our mind begins to wonder. We begin to ask questions like, what could happen and what is happening and what's going, and we begin to ask questions that there are no answers to. Or negative thinking, everything is going wrong and it's never going to get better. Or uncertainty, anxiety, where we begin to look around and we begin to be dominated by fears. And let me tell you something, this crisis is a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm for distraction, and fear is spreading faster than the virus. I say this in kindness. Just because your sky is falling doesn't mean my sky is falling. Now, are we in the same crisis? Yes. Are we in the same danger? Absolutely. But do we have the same perspective? Possibly not. I mean, my life is gone to pieces as far as my agenda and my priorities. I write, I speak. For April, May, I was traveling around the world speaking. They're all canceled. I'm not speaking anywhere. Who wants to be with people? I don't want to be with people. I don't want to speak until this thing's all taken care of. So somebody the other day called me and said, how are you doing? I said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm making lemonade. When given a lemon, make lemonade. So what am I doing? Am I speaking? No, all that's canceled. It's all changed. Hey, that's a financial fallout. That's a leadership fall. I can give you all kind of fallouts from that. Of course I can. But what am I going to do? I can't control that. Nothing will cause you more anxiety than trying to control something you can't control. And yet I watch people every day, I don't know, somehow reach out there with worry, thinking that anxiety and that worry will make things better for them. So what am I doing? Well, I'm reading books that I haven't been able to read for a while. I'm getting to write a book that I didn't have enough time to really write, and now I can write it and say, hey, because I'm writing it now, it's the most important book I've ever written. Hey, I'm getting to exercise. I'm getting to spend time with my family. I can give you a whole list of things right now that I'm doing because of the crisis. So what do leaders do? Don't miss this point. Leaders help people get traction during distraction. And the first step of getting traction is getting rid of negative emotions. Wow. I'm going to read you something now. C.S. Lewis, many of you know that name, a brilliant apologetic, a brilliant mind, a tremendous educator, a writer whose writings today are still powerfully affected. I'm going to read you something that C.S. Lewis wrote 72 years ago, 1948. And it's going to ring with amazing relevance. The only thing I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is I would like you, he was talking about the atomic bomb back there because that was what people were greatly concerned about then. They had entered into the atomic bomb age. So the only thing I guess I'm asking you to do is substitute, if you want to, the atomic bomb with the coronavirus. Let me read. Just hang on. It's worth it. Mentally stay with me. In one way, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we going to live in an atomic age? I'm tempted to reply, why? As you would have lived in the 16th century, when the plague visited London almost every year, or as you would have lived in a Viking age, when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed, as you're already living in the age of cancer, syphilis, paralysis, age of air raids, railway accidents, motor accidents, atomic bombs. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented, and quite a high percentage of us were going to die in unpleasant ways. We had indeed one very great advantage over our ancestors, anesthetics. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of a painful or premature death to a world that is already bristled with such chances and in which death itself has no chance at all but certainty. This is the first point to be made. And the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we are going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things. Praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts. He was from England. Not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds, and that's huge. They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds. In fact, if you're with somebody right now, I don't know, you may be in a family, with a couple, hope you're socially distancing, you're not with a lot of people, but if you're somebody, just look at somebody right now and say, fear will not dominate me. I got a choice here. And if you're not with anybody, say it to yourself. Say it out loud. Fear will not dominate me.
You're muted, Mike. So there you go.
So fear will not dominate. Sorry about that. I had myself muted so you could hear John well. And so I have some great notes that I took. Hopefully you've got some good notes. I'm going to pop up here our poll questions that we have so that we can look at, let's see if I can get it up here. There we go. Okay, so there's the poll on 5 questions for us. No, that's not. That says the same poll we answered earlier. So what we'll do is I'll try and figure that out while Karl, if you'll answer for us the first question that we had, which was about how do we go about this whole thing of thinking through the crisis and making this something that is going to take us to a different spot in our own thinking. So it was, in your opinion, you know, why is it so easy for a leader to get distracted during a crisis?
Well, there's so much going on right now. There's, and I think I can't remember which one of the speakers talked on that. The emotion, I think it was Michael York mentioned it. Emotion is real, and emotion. As John said, there aren't always straight up clear agendas on the part of the communicators out there, so you just don't know. Please go ahead and answer that poll that's in front of you as well while we're talking. You just don't know where they're coming from always, but there's a lot of fear, and it seems like fear is the commodity these days. And the biggest thing John said right there at the end, fear will not dominate me. So it's really easy to get distracted with emotion. But there's also all the logistics associated with having to do your business differently. If you have the good fortune, if you're blessed to work, as many of us are, if you've lost your work, there's additional, additional anxiety associated with that. With that, how do I provide for my family? How do I find an income? So there's so many things swirling out there that focusing on the key things that you need to deal with, setting aside the negative emotions and looking for how can I, asking ourselves, starting with that question, how can we handle this? And there's power in the subconscious mind that's there. And when you ask yourself a how can I question, without knowing the answer, a lot of times we don't want to ask the question because we don't know. Without knowing the answer, pretty soon the answers start coming to you because you're tuning your mind to look for solutions and take a positive track.
Okay, thank you, Karl. You know, I think as we look at this, you know, and we talk about the easiness of being distracted at times, is that we oftentimes have a lot of other things that pop into our minds as we're doing the different tasks that we need to do and as we lead. And, you know, John made a great point in here when he said that distractions confuse us, you know, all of the time. We can get confused by them. And so putting people first was what one of his key points were and what we need to do as leaders. And so as our poll questions are coming in, I'm seeing number 3 in here is one that is getting a lot of responses from people. And in your experience, you know, what are some good ways a leader can maintain focus during times of distraction? And so Dan, if you would, you know, chime in for a little bit here on this one, I'm going to unmute you so you're ready to go, and talk to us a little bit about, I know you've got a lot of things going on right now and a lot of different answers that you're getting. I think the other day you said something like it changes by the hour, but how do you, you know, what are some good ways that you maintain a focus during times where there's some distractions?
Yeah, that's a good question for me because I remember when I first started doing business, I was working for another guy. This was 20 years ago. And I was trying to do 3 things at once, like just all the time. And he would walk behind me and say, focus, focus, focus. Pick one thing and focus on it and get it done. And so I tried to break myself of that. And it hasn't worked at all. But I think part of it is strategizing your day. And for me, it's sometimes even the day before. At the end of your day, if you just take a break and kind of wind down by the day and say, tomorrow, what do I really want to focus on? So when you come in the morning, I know my best work time is in the morning. I do my best work between when I get here and about 1 o'clock. After that, I'm not as sharp, and sometimes not sharp at all. So if I focus my most challenging things at the beginning of the day and actually have them written out somewhere where I can go back and say, whoa, where was I? Okay, here's where I'm going. And another little secret that it's been in my head for the last few years, and I've taken it from one of our church leaders, and it's begin with the end in mind. Start your task thinking about, okay, where do I really want to go with this? Sometimes in the midst of crisis, we feel we have to be moving, and we are moving, but we're not going anywhere. And that's the part that the distraction kind of takes you on. At the end of the day, you look back and go, what did I do? I didn't get anywhere. I spent a lot of time and energy. I talked a lot, I said a lot of words, but where did that really get me? So beginning with the end in mind, to me, has been a huge help for me.
Okay. So somebody else, if you want to use that reaction button and put your hand up, or raise the hand if you know where that little icon is, but would love to hear. Kathy, you've got yours up, so.
Sure. I guess kind of where my focus has been when I think about this is just always keeping the mission or the purpose of what I'm doing in mind. And so in my world, it's really all about the kids, all about the kids. And so, one day they're in school and 2 days later, we're leading all the essential first responders kids and trying to do their distance learning and their homework, but all the emotions and everything going along with that, and kids learning what social distancing is all about when we weren't prepared to teach them that, but suddenly we were responsible for that and their safety. And there's been lots of emotion, lots of conflict between my team, lots of tension and fear, all the things John talked about. And I just keep bringing them back to what's best for the kids, what's best for the kids. What do we need to do for the kids and for these families that need us to be open so that the families can be working and doing their first responding. So I guess my point is purpose and mission statement, like what are your core values, and always remembering what those are, and kind of reminding my team, like what part of this is showing that we care about every child, or that, we're treating them all as unique individuals, et cetera. And if I bring them back to the vision and the purpose, it kind of helps them get through some of their conflicts and tensions. So that's where my mind went.
Good. I think that's a great point of, when we're in these situations where we're sometimes distracted and don't know what to do, we go back to what are our core values? What's our mission? What's our vision? What's our purpose about what we're doing and why we're serving in the way that we do? So somebody else that would like to comment about, your good ways that a leader can focus in times of distraction.
I can chime in. This is Megan DeVries. I'm in food service. And so one of the things that I feel like we try to learn how to prioritize when you're not in crisis is probably better, but now that we're all here, we will up our game. And so I liked what I think it was Dan was sharing about just that focus. And so I have really, when we have those crazy weeks in my past life, which have no measure compared to the new crazy weeks we have, the things that I have done for myself to help me focus is find a platform for, okay, I don't want to be interrupted every 5 minutes with what questions you have. We have a meeting at 9 o'clock. Put everything you need on tomorrow's agenda for the 9 a.m. meeting, and that's when we're going to check base. If something is on fire, run over to my desk. If something is not on fire, put it on the meeting, and that's when we have our check-ins. So really setting up systems for my team to have check-in times with me, so I am not getting 400 emails in an hour about things people wanted to know by the end of the day, because I can't handle that much. And then another thing for me is actually sometimes when I need to focus is hitting pause on my email. Literally, like, I use Gmail, and so there's a pause button, and literally pausing, so I will not see any new emails until I handle the priority I have in front of me. And then also, I think that in times of crisis, as leaders, even if we are very hands-on leaders, we need to become better delegators. And so one of the things that I've had to do is say, okay, this is what I need to accomplish today. And that means I can't accomplish these other 3 things that are super important. Who can take these on? And then making sure we have very specific assignments of who's going to handle this. This is now the point person on this. I know yesterday they weren't, now they are. And so those are some of the things that have helped me get through the last couple weeks.
That's good. That's good stuff, Megan. Thank you. So let's jump to question number 4 on our list here. It says, in your experience, what are some helpful ideas for positive thinking during times of challenge? So what do you do to help yourself stay positive when you have those negative things that maybe are happening around you? So Megan gave us some great points about delegation and about, being able to have control and take control over your day and create systems. What are some of the other things that people are doing that allow you to stay positive?
Mike, I'll share. I don't have my hand raised button, but I'll share on that one. It kind of dovetails off of what I think it was Kathy was sharing, was keeping your focus on your priority, what are your core values, and always setting your intention for the day with gratitude. I didn't learn this from a book. I didn't learn this from a coworker. I learned this from my mother. I learned this. She's one of the best leaders I've ever had the privilege to know. And she taught me that you should count your blessings. And if you sit and you think for just 5 minutes, you will find more to be grateful for, more to be glad that you have than you do to complain about. And so oftentimes, and this just happened to me earlier this week, I was having a bit of an anxiety-riddled morning. I had a webinar to deliver. I wasn't really sure how it was going to go. I was scared. I was feeling just riddled with anxiety and distractions about it. So I surround myself with the people who I know are going to lift me up in that situation. And thankfully, I can call my mom on speed dial and say, Mom, help me out here. And she will set me down and just kind of set things straight with me and say, let's talk about what you have to be grateful for and what do you have that other people don't have, and let's focus on the positive. So my words of encouragement are to do things like this, where you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are going to lift you up, because we're all going to have those moments where we feel broken, or we feel distracted, or we feel anxious. And who are you going to go to? I could go to Mike and say, Mike, help me out here, or Mom, help me out here, or give me some words of encouragement. So find those who lift you up, not those that fan the flames of your anxiety and fan the flames of your negativity. Find those that are going to say, you can call and say, I need you to remind me that everything's going to be okay, and count your blessings. So that's just something that I personally do and just did 2 days ago, and it helps me out.
Yeah, great. Great. I was listening this week. I've been on a 20-day challenge piece through a group that I'm connected with. And one of the speakers was talking about this whole need to set your mind, as Dan was saying in the morning, and the point that Jennifer just brought up about having a piece of that being gratitude. And gratitude not in the way that, oh, I'm just thankful that it's a nice day, but more of what Jennifer's saying in regards to what are the things that you have in your life, the blessings that you have in life, people that you have, and then actually thinking through about, if I'm stuck today, who's a person I can call? Because right now in our previous work, we maybe were able to walk down the hall to a colleague and vent a little bit, and now you're going, yeah, I don't want to interrupt them because I'm going to bother them right now. They may be busy. Well, they don't have to answer the phone, but I tell you what, when I get a call from Louanne, I pick it up and go, oh, good, Louanne's calling me. I love to talk to her. So find those things that are there that are going to help you be positive, and maybe even create your own little positivity list of who are the people that are going to fill me with life today if I'm struggling with things. Who can I call? Whether it's your mom or whether it's a friend or somebody else who you can call that's going to really help you along the way. So another question here that has big numbers around it, and I think there's probably all of us have this part, and Jennifer alluded to this a little bit, is number 6. What's the best advice for a leader who needs to pull themselves together, and why is that good advice? So I always like to hear what people's experiences are, where they get their advice from, and so raise a hand or just unmute yourself if that works too for you. If you can't find that button, and love to hear what your advice would be for people.
Like, while we're waiting, can you give us that one more time? That was good stuff.
Sure. So what is your best advice for a leader who needs to pull themselves together, and why? What advice would you have? So John gave us some things in there about, about taking care of people. He talked about, this part about the uncertain anxiety that we sometimes get. So how do you, what advice would you have if I came to you and said, I'm really challenged with this whole thing that's going on right now. I'm getting stuff that's happening from one side that's telling me I need to do this, and somebody else is saying I need to do that. What advice would you give me to help me, pull myself together if I'm a little bit scattered right now?
Mike, can I step in here?
Sure, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, and then Evan has his hand raised too.
Okay, Louanne will jump in after Jeff. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you don't mind, if I can give you an experience, way back when, for the first Gulf, we were getting ready, had a unit, we were getting ready to deploy, and my executive officer did something that we both knew was not correct. And everybody, I always want to be calm and everything, but it just really set me off. So what I did is I stepped back. I actually went for a walk, and I just spent time thinking and so I could calm down and handle it. Sometimes you just need to step back from the situation instead of reacting is what's worked for me, quite frankly.
Okay.
And it's all depends on the perspective and the situation, but we all want to be calm in a crisis, but sometimes things get a little confused and a little, what do I want to say, you're in a firefighting mode. And what I found has worked best for me is just to step back, take a few seconds, if not a few minutes, whatever time you have, to kind of think through it, and then just bring yourself back into it.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. So step back and reset. Okay, Louanne, what were you wanted to add to that?
Actually, I was going to call on Evan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was going to kind of build off of what Jeff was saying, in that we always want to draw back and reiterate to our folks that, you've received training for this, and we've built up our policies and programs for a crisis. However, like Jeff, I'm sure could mention as well, is all the training compared to the real thing, there's always kind of a different cadence to actually being in those experiences or being in an event, a crisis, whether it's responding to something like COVID-19, or for our case, it'd be an aircraft accident. And so we fall into we've seen our younger managers fall into two schools of thought, either an underaction or an overaction. And that's where we need to either go to the folks that underreact and remind them that leaders initiate. It's time to take a step. We don't have time to come up with a perfect plan. Get a good one and go, and we'll fix it along the way. And then for our folks that are overreacting, we try to draw them back a little bit, slow down that pacing a little, and then get them to, take a breath, take a walk. We use a stop method: stop, take a breath, observe, proceed, and then get back into the game there for us to help out and continue on to where we're going. And that the first things we do always as well is we iterate to our managers two things: no matter what through a crisis, somebody's in charge and we have a plan. And so we make sure that they're understanding that.
Okay, good stuff. Somebody's in charge and we have a plan, and step back and look. And then for those of us that are working directly with those people is realizing who those under responders are and those over responders as well. Yeah. Michael, it looks like you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just building on everything everybody said, because I think it's been absolutely fabulous, is this piece of controlling what you can control. And really in these moments of crisis, I find myself getting hooked sometimes on worrying and acting on things that I have absolutely no control of. And to me, it's been very beneficial to take that step back, take a deep breath, and really do an assessment of what is it that's going on that I have control over, and making sure that I control that. And I think that's been very, very helpful with teams as well, because we start to spin a lot, right? And the question is, what are the 3 things right now that we have control over? And let's execute, execute, execute on those 3 things and build on that success.
I like that part about, you've limited what do we have control over by saying, what are the 3 things that we have control over? And that helps people really focus around what's most important to them.
So Mike, Jeremy had his hand raised.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, I was just going to go off of what Jeff and Evan said, and something that someone said to me a long time ago is, are you a reactor or a responder when there's a crisis? Are you like a nuclear reactor and you're just going to blow up, or are you going to be a first responder and take the calm approach and make sure you're dealing with the situation how it needs to be dealt with? And then the thing that keeps popping in my head from last week to this week as well is adapt. And with new challenges, that there's new opportunities. And the one thing that you can control through all this is, what are the changes that you're going to make coming out of this? I know I'm in ministry, and we're going to change a ton of how we look at things and how we operate things. A lot of our small groups for middle school kids are going extremely better because they have the control of the group a lot more with the Zoom groups than they do when it's just a bunch of people all chiming in at one time. So there's some changes we're definitely going to make on the moving forward whenever we do roll out of this. And for me, I'm constantly looking at now, how long can we sustain going this way? And when we do roll out of things, how's that going to look? Because it's going to look different for us.
Okay, great. Things are certainly going to look different in how we do things. And so part of our, I think, as we continue over the next couple of weeks here is thinking about how is it that we're going to lead differently? What are things going to be that are different as we move forward from today and to whatever the changes are that are happening? So having that play in the back of your mind or in the forefront of your mind. So somebody else want to add in about, how do you help somebody or yourself to pull themselves together when there's tough times?
Mike, it looks like Dan wants to jump in, and then I'll go after him. Go ahead, Dan.
Dan?
I think I've learned for myself is my first reaction is usually not the best response. Echoing what Jeff said, it's never smart for me to have a situation come up and craft a perfect email and blast it out. I usually have a tendency now to put it on pause, come in the morning, read it again, and go, did I really write that? So my first reaction is usually not the best reaction. And the second thing is finding good counsel. I think that's huge. Having friends you can call or people you can call inside the operation as well as outside, because there's 2 separate perspectives. And both those are very important.
Okay, great. Karl?
Well, my first reaction is usually when I've got someone who's having difficulty with the situation is usually to just start giving them advice. And I've found that really isn't the best. So really asking a question to start with, what is your biggest concern right now? And helping them think through the challenge. Because oftentimes I find that myself and other leaders have challenges when you're trying to deal with everything at once. You're trying to deal with the whole room instead of just the one thing that's most important right now. So asking good questions of our leaders when they come to us in a mode where they're having difficulty keeping it together is the best way to help them identify for themselves what are the most important things. And anytime, there's an old saying that if I say it, you doubt it. If you say it, it's true. And you, being a thinking person, probably just doubted what I just said for a second, because you should. But if we can help our people say what their challenges are and help them to articulate, and maybe do a little coaching with them, what do you think some of the best solutions might be? Because the solution that's owned by the team member is going to be better executed than one that I give them as a my idea kind of way to solve it.
Right.
Mike, I had a really good leader once, and Karl just made me think of this, that if during a crisis, I would go to that leader, I was having a problem, she would always ask an initial question where she would say, what is it that you need? Do you want to just kind of vent and tell me everything that's going on, and I'm here to listen? Or do you want to vent, and do you want me to help you fix it? So I think a tendency for leadership is to jump in and fix. My job is to fix. My job is to fix the problem. But sometimes if we empower our people to come up with their own solutions by just sitting back and listening and saying, hey, I'm here to listen and repeat what I heard you say. I'll validate your concerns, sometimes your anger, sometimes your uncertainty. I'll help guide you to the right answer without me just jumping in and giving you the answer. And that made me feel valued, and that made me feel heard. And it made me feel that my leader took a minute to understand that sometimes I'm just a volcano, and I need to have that initial Mount Vesuvius, reaction and that overflow. And once I get all of that out, now I can focus, now I can process, now I can come up with a solution. I don't always need you to hop in and fix it for me. I need you to listen and be mindful enough that sometimes I might come to you and say, I don't know what to do. I need you to help me fix this. So that's really helpful.
Great comments there, Jennifer, because I think so oftentimes, as you said, as leaders, and especially for those of you that maybe are a bit younger than some of us that have been around for a while, is that we believe our role is to fix things. And instead, in coaching people along the way in that process and asking some questions like Jennifer said, I recall as soon as she was saying it, it flashed in my mind of this person who used to always run into my office. It seemed like hourly, but it probably wasn't that. But they'd always come in and they were always upset. And finally I said, are you wanting some help here? Or are you just like needing to complain and vent? And the person said, I just needed to have somebody listen to what I was going to say. I don't need you to do anything. I said, okay, so how about we make this arrangement from now on? When you come in and you're in that mode, just say, I want you to listen to me. Because immediately when somebody would come to me like that as a leader, I was always immediately putting it in gear to say, okay, what is it that I need to do to fix this for them, when really they just needed to vent it, because we have a lot of verbal processors that we work with, and they just need to get it out so they can get some clarity around what they're wanting to do and needing to do. Okay. Anybody else that can add to that or help us see things a little differently?
Mike, I will just add, I think, and each of you have touched on this today, which I love, is that it really begins with some of your own self-reflection as a leader, being able to identify where you are at. And I think that is just key. I have kind of two strategies that I use. One, and obviously Mike alluded to it earlier, I do have a call list. And so when I find myself as a leader getting stuck, getting stuck in whether it's my mind wandering or even thinking that I have this really great answer, sometimes I'm like, a little bit like Dan, like maybe that's really not the answer. And so, I need to double check with some folks. And I have a call list for people that when I need unstuck, just kind of refill my cup a little bit, those positive people that you have in your space. And then I have a call list for people that I was like, I need someone to challenge my thinking. And so I need someone, that other person who thinks about things totally different than I do. And, usually, I'm just sending a quick text, hey, do you have a minute? And I'm just like sharing with them. And typically they're not in my field, but it just really helps me get unstuck in this space. And I guess my second one is, and some of you like this, some of you might not, but I actually journal before I go to bed, so I can kind of do a big brain dump into something. And one of the reasons I do that is not just because, I think journaling is a good strategy or anything, but what it also allows you to do is when you get past that problem, whatever you're stuck on, trust me, when you look back at that a week later, you're like, oh, I was stuck on that. Oh gosh, I can't believe I was stuck on that. That's like so old news. But it actually kind of can fill you back up, like, oh gosh, I got through this. And now, I'm empowered. Like, I got through this. This was really tough, but I made a decision. This is how I got through it. And so those are just two things that I use as a leader to get myself unstuck as well.
Well, that's a great point, Louanne, is that even though maybe you're not a journaling person like Louanne is, where you do it at the end of the day, but writing down, what are the things that you're learning right now? Because we know that there will be another crisis in the future, and those of you that are younger leaders, you're gonna see 2 or 3 more of these during your career as a leader. And so, what are the things that you're learning right now that you can go back and apply? And so maybe you apply Evan's stop method, or maybe it's Louanne's journaling piece, or maybe it's Jennifer's part about having gratitude, or Kathy's part about focusing on what's the vision and the mission that we're all about, is having your thoughts. Because when you're able to come back to those, whether you can find that journal 10 years from now that you wrote in 2020 when it's 2030 and there's another crisis, but your subconscious mind can remember those things that you do. And so I think that's really something that is of great value and great advice to get your thoughts out, get them on a piece of paper, or virtual paper to capture some of those things. So any additional thoughts, comments? We haven't heard from some of the younger folks in the group. So Malachi, you're smiling, so I'm going to let you chime in here. I got you on mute.
Sorry, I unmuted myself and then you were unmuting me too. So I think one of the biggest things to remember during a time of crisis, especially for a leader, and I think that something that I often fall into is thinking that I have to be the one to pull myself together, I have to be the one to take, complete control, do it alone. And something that you have to remember is that you're not alone. First of all, you can't you can try, but you're not alone. You're part of a team. I mean, that's kind of what it takes to be a leader. You have to be able to lead people. So you're not alone, nor can you do it alone. And you have to use the resources that you have available. I think Megan touched on that. The delegation. I think too often we try and do everything ourselves, and that can lead. Who was it that was talking about that? Or I think it was you, Michael. People just coming into your office, trying to just jump and honestly, give you ideas of ways to solve the problem, which are, could just be other issues that are actually distracting you from the main problem, the main issue. And I think Megan also touched on that as well. Just, hey, save that for our 9 o'clock meeting, and we can talk about that then. You have to stay focused on what matters most, and I think something that I've also realized is almost looking at it, I don't know, pre-retrospectively. It's kind of an interesting thing, but just thinking ahead in what way, or what would I have done differently now? I don't know how to describe this actually, but just thinking about what I could do differently now, or what I would have done differently now, thinking from my future self. Those decisions that I'm scared to make, that I don't want to make, that would make me vulnerable. But just like John was saying, you have to put people first every time. That's what it comes down to. And you have to rely on other people. It's awfully hard to get traction, to get the leverage to push yourself back together, after you've fallen apart. So you need other people to come around you to kind of give you that hug almost, to help put you back together.
Yeah, well, that's great, Malachi. Thank you for those thoughts. I really am excited about the opportunities that lie in front of us, and it's trying to figure out what those are. And as we continue to work through this, I think that one of the things that Louanne said that I wanted to go back to, that I just thought of as Malachi was talking there, was, who are those people around you? And do you know who they are, and do you know how they operate? Louanne made a great point in saying that she reaches out to people who think differently than she thinks, and she knows they think differently than she thinks. And so if you have those people that you need a different perspective, is being able to reach out to them and figure out what those are. All of us have personalities. Our personality drives the things that we do. And so knowing that I can reach out to somebody like Karl, who's more outgoing and energetic than I am, and say, okay, what is it that I need to know to be able to help lead my people through this challenge? Because I want to focus on the details, because if you guys see my emails, I'm a detail guy. You can just tell that. I number things, I put bullet points, I highlight stuff, so you know exactly what's important to me. So that's how I operate. So do you know how the people around you operate? And do you know what are the drivers behind what they do and why they do what they do? So it's just something for you to think about. So I know we're right at 9 o'clock here, and so I know that some of you probably have some other commitments that you have to get to, which is great. We'll hang around and talk about a little bit more of this if there's more of you that want to continue the discussion. Next week, we're going to be talking about character and crisis, and so we'll see another piece from John. I'll send you out the reflection questions for today, again, for us to think about. What's your big takeaway? What are the things that you have? And then we'll give you some of these questions in that email that are coming from the work for next week. So if you got to hop off, great. If not, I'm able to hang around here for a little bit longer and continue the discussion. I know some of you have been great listeners, but we'd also love to hear your thoughts throughout this as well. So if you got time, great. And if not, we'll see you next Friday at 8 o'clock.
Have to hop on at 9 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer.
Bye.
Thanks, John.
Yes. So Michael was, maybe he was just, well, maybe he was just waving. Oh, maybe he was waving goodbye. I thought his hand was raised.
Okay. So another question that got a lot that we haven't really talked about a bit is about, in your experience, what are some good ways to combat anxiety and fear during times of uncertainty? So, you know, is there, Karl, you've certainly had some challenges in the past. I know what some of those are, but there's anxiety that happens when you all of a sudden lose a big chunk of your business, that somebody goes somewhere else, like happened to you, because we've had those conversations. How do you deal with that anxiety? What advice would you give people that are still on the call here about how you deal with the anxiety and fear?
Well,
let's do Karl and then Malachi. Raise his hand too.
Excellent. The reference that Mike's making, we at one point lost 60% of our revenue in 1 week and had to lay off 60% of our staff and didn't know if we'd be able to continue. That was a tough time, no question. And if you're not a person of faith, then that's absolutely fine. We're not telling you what you should do. But for me, that was my first step, is that I prayed. I asked for God to help me because I needed wisdom. I did not know what to do. And then I sought counsel from wise advisors, executives that were on my board. And we together masterminded some solutions, and we were able to put the organization back together, rebuild it. And it's thriving today. I'm no longer leading that group, but it's thriving today because of what we were able to do together. So it really was take some time to pray, seek wisdom, and seek it from wise counselors, and put together a plan, and then go after it. We all feel better in action. You know, there's one of the things that'll get you most is if you're sitting there with multiple options in front of you and you don't decide. And then it helps me to realize no decision is a decision. So not taking action is a decision, and I have to be responsible for that too. So what's our best course of action? Let's get after it. And I immediately start feeling better because I'm doing something to make the situation better.
Yeah. Good. Malachi?
All right, there we go. Yeah, so just surrounding yourself with positive. I found this one linked to the former question, number 4, but just surrounding yourself with positive people and with positive leaders, honestly. And just reminding yourself of the brevity and reality of the situation, and that you're not alone in this. You know, you have, I mean, for you, Karl, you have a whole, company that's kind of relying on you, which can kind of drag you down, but also that you have all these people that are on the same side as you, that are fighting the same battle as you are. And then, yeah, of course, just relying on the Lord and not leaning on your own understanding. it can be really overwhelming in those times.
Good, good.
Hey, I'd like to add something to that if I can. Sure. I know that, you know, part of the struggle that we have, you know, is with our own creativity, being able to see things from another perspective, being able to do things in a different way than we've done because we're creatures of habit. And so one of the things that I like to do is called a list of 10, where I think of 10 ways to solve a problem, 10 different ways. It forces me to have to think outside the box. Normally it's pretty easy to come up with, you know, a handful, but if you have to come up with 10, that's, you know, it forces you to make those decisions. So.
Good. That's outstanding.
Thanks, Robert. I think, you know, one of the things that as we're looking at, you know, these things, is sometimes it's helpful for us to have systems in place as well, you know, that focuses on things. So Karl was saying that when he was in the crisis, that he sought counsel from wise advisors, that he prayed about this, and then he put together a plan of action. So there's a system to that, right? I mean, you go inside, you go outside, and then you write this out about what it is that you need, and then it's to go forward and do. And I know that's not an original quote from Karl, but no decision is a decision is really a key thing for us to keep in mind when we're in a crisis, that if we just are sitting around observing and not doing anything to move us forward, it's really taking us away from what our real purpose is about creating action to get results. So other thoughts that people have? Okay. Well, if there's no other thoughts, then we'll wrap this up for today. Really appreciate everybody being on. I want to thank Louanne and Karl and Dan again for your support on this, and Malachi and Megan and Elizabeth of hanging around clear till the end today. Great to have everybody, and we'll look forward to next Friday at 8 o'clock. We'll see you then.
Hang in there, guys.
Have a great
Have
week.
a good day.
Bye-bye.
All right.